Progressive death metal, doom metal, gothic metal, and some of my favorite albums of 2024 so far. It's out today in What I Missed for April 12th, 2024. 7 out today, 7 I've missed along the way. Let's do it.
Let's do it! Let's do it! Let's do it! Let's do it!
First up, we have the band In Vain with Solemn. And yeah, I might as well just be honest with you. This is in my top 2 albums of 2024 so far, along with Scale. This album is absolutely incredible. I've been a huge fan of this band since their debut album back in 2007, and just seeing all the progressive changes that they've made over the years, while still sounding like themselves. On this album, you absolutely hear that progressive death metal sound. You hear more of those really rich, clean vocals that they've really been incorporating over the last couple albums, which is a very nice touch. And also, being able to experiment a little bit more, having some more saxophone, having some more genre bending, being able to do some left turns while being able to course right with the ship is just absolutely incredible. Match that up with awesome production and you have one of the best albums of 2024. Mark my words.
What's the point of all this cleaning? Are we so vain?
Next up, we have My Dying Bride with A Mortal Binding. And this is one of the most monumental and colossal doom metal albums that will be coming out in 2024. This is pure classic My Dying Bride, but updated just enough for 2024. It doesn't feel like a retread of what they were doing in the 90s and the 2000s. It doesn't sound like what they've been doing over the last couple albums. It's kind of a mixture of both. You can hear some of those great quality death metal elements that they really used to harken on back in the day, but you really hear the gothic sound coming through just as much. It's a great, fantastic balance, and I'm so happy to see that Aaron Stainthorpe and company are going just as strong as ever. My Dying Bride is one of my favorite doom bands of all time, and this album lives up to absolutely all of the hype.
Webster's defines it as an agreement under the law which is unbreakable.
Next up is Nocturna with Of Sorcery and Darkness. The sophomore album from this Italian power metal symphonic band is just absolutely incredible work, which I expect no less from Italy because, especially in 2024, they have proven to be one of the strongest genres of the year, at least in my humble opinion. With this being their sophomore album, they were able to refine everything and make this album even superior to their debut, which I thought was some fantastic stuff. The songs are catchier, it gets heavier when it needs to, it's got the great catchy moments that you would expect in a style like this, amazing musicianship from across the board, and yeah, just one of the best symphonic power metal albums that you're going to hear with just that little bit of tinge of gothic metal to satisfy those that are into the darkness. This album rules. Go check it out.
Magic is dumb? Does this look dumb?
Don't make me come over there!
Next up, we have Tomorrow's Rain with Ovdan. This is absolutely phenomenal gothic death doom, and it's that way in every sense of the word, and especially with everything that's going on in their world right now in Tel Aviv. Yeah, this one's pretty poignant. Also featuring some guest spots from members of Dark Funeral Mayhem and even old school Merciful Fate. This album absolutely shines. It's so dark though, but those moments that you kind of see through the darkness make up for everything. It's so dark and gloomy as well, which is really that great atmosphere for the style, but it just feels darker, heavier, and shines through so much more. loving what this band has done since their debut album a few years ago, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Gee, Marge, who needs a car wash when you can just drive around in the rain?
Up next is the Irish metal band Ora with Maelstrom. This is an excellent combination of how to do old school metalcore with just the right amount of sludge and progressive metal elements to make it really, really dark. I like what's going on here. It has the throwbacks that I appreciate, and they're not trying to be a poppy, catchy band. They're writing some really dark, heavy stuff here. The name shows it off. Maelstrom shows it off. And just everything about this album just matches the intensity of metal, hardcore, sludge, and prog, like I mentioned. So much great stuff going on here, especially for a debut album, and I can't wait to see what's next. Up next is Vattenplass with the Empyrean Equation of the Lost Things. This album is pure, unadulterated progressive metal, with just the slightest hints of classic heavy metal and power metal thrown in. So, in other words, it's classic Vattenplass. This band has always been a killer band, and this is the first non-concept album they've done in well over a decade. Just a great collection of songs, 6 tracks, a couple epics thrown in there as well, but if you're looking for that old school Dream Theater sound, a little bit of Symphony X, the tiniest bit of Evergrey, some Fates Warning, and that early new wave of British heavy metal sound, kinda mixed in all together with that German progressive metal sound, you can't do better than Vattenplass. Nerd! Up next is Very Kalpa with Tumio. This is fantastic folk metal, and April has been an extravagant month for folk metal. You've had Tyr, you've had Korpiklani, and now Very Kalpa. This is more of the traditional heavy folk metal stuff going on. Not to say that it's not fun, not to say that it's not danceable, drinkable, and something that you want to see in a live setting, but it is heavier, kind of more of that Insafirum side of folk metal, if you will. But this is fantastic stuff from start to finish, and the band just gets more consistent and refines everything better and better with every album. And the fact that they've had 4 albums in 6 years is just mind-blowing, showing that their consistency is not lost. Fantastic stuff, and if you need some folk metal from this month, check this one out.
Finland, let's see that native dance. Smile more. Work that pelvis. No, too much smile. Sit down.
Well, that's everything I checked out that came out today. So, what did I miss?
What I miss?
First up is Ben Sinister with Mostly Great Things.
Oh, you gotta rock around the rules, man. Shut up and pay your dues. You gotta work for the money, do for the show. It's not 45, get ready, let's go.
And do I make the obvious joke here? I think I have to make the obvious joke. It's mostly great album. I'm joking, of course. The whole album is great from start to finish. If you've never checked out Ben Sinister before, think of like indie rock, hard rock, classic rock, and the slightest tinges of prog, whether they want to admit it or not, are shining through this entire album, and have always shined through pretty much out the entire band. I really caught into this band with their album Animals, and it's so great to see over the years that they're still making the music that they want to make. It's fun, it's catchy, it makes you think, and very stylized. And if you're looking for something that's not brutal death metal or grindcore like I usually cover on this channel, you need to check out something like Ben Sinister. It is a great palate cleanser for any metal fan.
Pretty good.
Up next is Benighted with Ekbom. And their 10th album is easily the most brutal album the band has put out to date. It's just that perfect brutal death metal and grindcore mixed together. And of course, especially what they've been doing over the last few albums, they've been adding in some more slam moments in here, so of course you're going to hear those moments going on there occasionally, but not always. So if that is kind of a turnoff, I understand, but I think the music more than justifies it being there. With excellent production and songwriting, it is not just standard blast beats and fretboard Olympics. There's something to be said on this album, and it's quite the dark, brutal experience. So if that's what you need, Benighted just absolutely knocked it out of the park on this one.
That is the most metal thing I ever heard in my whole life. High five.
Up next is Judgment Fire with Kingdom of Skyscrapers. This is the third album in 15 months from this Swedish band, and I absolutely love what's going on here. It's so fantastic the way that they're able to be a goth metal band and be a melodeath band at the same time. And at least on this particular album, they seem to separate those styles. The gothic songs are a bit more of the mainstream appeal, super catchy stuff, and of course those clean vocals. The melodeath side is a little faster, sometimes a little thrashier, and of course the screams and growls that go along with that. It almost kind of feels like two EPs mixed together, but I do appreciate the fact that whether you love the gothic clean side or the heavier melodeath side, half of the album is at least for you. And I'm definitely going to be going back and checking out those other two albums, because if this is what they did, I want to see where they came to at this point, and I'm so excited about the future. Up next is the debut album from Litchfield with The Maze.
Leaving together to uncertain worlds.
And this is some superior goth metal going on here. It almost gets into the death metal territory on here. There are some moments on here that are absolutely crushing, but this is a goth album through and through. The vocals are so sorrowful and just agonizing in the best way possible. This is the kind of goth metal that you go to if you are a metal fan. You want something heavier, kind of like in the Paradise Lost kind of feel, but a completely different style of vocal technique, and of course vibrato. But this album simply rules from start to finish, and I'm so glad I discovered it. For all my goth fans out there, you need to check this one out.
Oh, this isn't going to be about Jesus, is it?
All things are about Jesus, Homer. Except this.
Next up is Synthetic Sentience with Aeon of the Machine. This debut album is absolutely bonkers. I've been trying to figure out how to describe this album. It's progressive metal, it's brutal death metal, it's almost power metal, and industrial all combined together. So imagine something kind of like Fear Factory meets Hate Eternal meets Cybreed meets some of the wackiness of Dragon Force. I know that sounds weird, but seriously, give this one a shot if you think it might be up your alley, because there's some absolutely talented work going on here. Even if the drums do sound like they're programmed, they are real. And of course done by Kevin Talley, one of the best session drummers out there. This album rules. And if you want that fast, heavy, machine gun, robotic-like metal, you can't get any better than this.
Bite my shiny metal ass.
Next up is Spit on Your Grave with Arcanum. This is pure, unadulterated Mexican death metal. Of course, you'll hear brutal classic elements from something like Obituary or Cannibal Corpse, but you also hear some hardcore elements in there sometimes, brutal breakdowns, and of course, if you couldn't tell by the name of the band, they're very horror influenced, and it's some great stuff to hear, especially with something as legendary as the movie that they named themselves after. This is 8 songs, 30.5 minutes, And I can't imagine any death metal fan who loves the old school mixed in with some hardcore stuff. I can't imagine how they'd be disappointed in an album like this. This is just top tier when it comes to that really heavy metal.
This day just can't get any worse.
And finally, we have Vulture with Sentinels. This is the fourth album from this German band, and they really do live up to the name, Vulture. It's fast, it's speedy, it's that great speed heavy metal, classic heavy metal, revival metal sound, and the occasional shrieks and screams that does sound like a vulture that's about to swoop in and take its prey. Mix that all together and you have some very fascinating and very, very enjoyable revival metal going on here. Everything that you could imagine from the genre, which has no subpar bands in it that at least that I'm aware of. And Vulture is just a shining light in that genre. This is just a fun album to listen to from start to finish, and if you love that sound, you're gonna love this album. And there you go, folks, 14 brand new albums, 7 that came out today, 7 I missed along the way, but all pretty much brand new. So what do you think? Did you make some new discoveries? Are you happy I covered some albums? Are you upset that I covered some albums? Did I miss out on some stuff? Does all of my opinions suck? Just let me know in the comments down below. And of course, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. We're continuing on here throughout 2024, and there's no shortage of good albums to come. So until next week, for the final week of April 2024, and also for the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel, this is Josh Runquist saying, embrace the skillet.
Well, that's the end of me.